A frightened young woman pulls back her sleeve to reveal a glowing, gold, circular mark on her scarred arm, while an elderly royal man in robes stares at it in total shock and disbelief. In a village courtyard at sunset, the young woman stands trembling as the glowing golden seal on her arm shines brighter. The royal elder realizes her true identity. Nafisa was 19 years old. She had been pulled from a swollen river the morning her mother died, and she had been carried to the compound, wrapped in the wrapper her mother was washing when the sickness took her. The wrapper was the color of burnt clay. It still smells of soap, even now. Elder Obina, who is a kind man, with 3 wives already buried and a 4th still living, took the child without asking her to kneel or to thank. He gave her a small room at the back of the compound, and a name. The name was Nafisa, after his mother, who he said had the same long, quiet eyes. For 4 years, the girl lived quietly. She fetched water before the cockerels woke. She swept the courtyard without being told. She braided her own hair in the dark because her stepmother, Adeze, did not like to be disturbed in the morning. And on her left wrist, where a birthmark had been since she was a baby, a small bronze circle, the size of a man's thumb, she kept it covered, always, with a strip of cloth. The cloth she changed every morning. Nobody in the compound asked why. Out of respect, they said. Out of fear, they meant. The birthmark, when it was seen, looked like a coin pressed into the skin. The skin around it was darker than the rest. To the village children, it looked like a wound. To the older women who had buried their own mothers and remembered what their mothers had whispered, it looked like something else. Madame Irowanow, the eldest woman under the baobab at the entrance of the village, used to look at the mark when the girl passed, and then look away quickly, as if she had seen something she was not supposed to remember in public. She never said anything. She only tightened her wrapper at the shoulder, the way women do when they are keeping a secret that is not their own. Adeze did not marry Elder Obina for love. She married him because his compound was the biggest in Amara Ife, and because the harvest from his yam barn could feed her real daughter, Chiamaka, until Chiamaka was old enough to be married well. When Chiamaka was born, Adeze had whispered into the baby's ear a sentence the midwife pretended not to hear. "This one will sit where the other one sits." The other one was Nafisa. Even at 3 days old, it seemed Chiamaka understood. She cried when Nafisa came near her, and she slept only when Nafisa was sent out of the room. The first 9 years were quiet. Adeze was polite at meals. She corrected Nafisa gently when she mispronounced a greeting. She braided the girl's hair when she had time. But when Chiamaka turned 13, and the first marriage offers began to arrive at the compound, Adaze's face changed. It changed the way a sky changes before a dry season storm. Slowly, then all at once. She stopped calling Nafisa by name. She started calling her the girl. If a visitor praised Nafisa's manners, Adeze would answer, "She is not my worry. She is Elder Obina's burden." If a visitor praised Nafisa's face, she would say, "Her face is not the problem. It is what is written on her skin." And she would tap the inside of her own wrist to show what she meant. The first thing Adeze did openly was to forbid Nafisa from covering her wrist. She said it was pride. She said the cloth strip the girl wore was a sign of vanity, as if the girl were pretending to be wounded for attention. She said it in front of Chiamaka first, then in front of Elder Obina, then in front of the compound's neighbors. Each time she raised her voice a little higher. Each time, Elder Obina said nothing. He had grown tired, you see. His back was bowed from years of bending over yam mounds. His eyes were not what they had been. He could hear Adeze. He could not bring himself to argue with her. So the rule stood. No cloth strip on the wrist. Nafisa, who had covered the mark since she could remember, walked the village with the small bronze circle exposed to the sun. People stared. Children pointed. Old women shook their heads and said nothing. The second thing Adaze did was to take Nafisa's wrapper. The wrapper was the one her mother had been washing the morning she died. Adaze said it was too old to be worn. She said it carried sickness. She said a person who kept an old wrapper was a person who kept old curses. She replaced it with a thin cloth the color of dry bone. From that day, Nafisa's shoulders looked thinner. From that day, the village children stopped calling her by name. They began to call her the Ash Girl, because her wrapper was the color of ash, and because, on her wrist, the small bronze circle now looked like a coin pressed into soot. The name spread. Even Elder Obina began to use it under his breath, the way men do when they are ashamed of what is happening in their own compound, but cannot bring themselves to stop it. The third thing Adaze did was the worst, and it is the reason this story is being told at all. One evening, when Elder Obina had gone to the next village for a yam meeting, Adaze called Nafisa to the back of the kitchen. She told the girl to roll up her sleeve. Nafisa obeyed, the way she always obeyed, because obedience in that compound was the price of being allowed to sleep under a roof. Adaze looked at the bronze circle on the wrist for a long time. She did not speak. Then she went to the hearth, took the iron ladle that had been heating in the ash, and held it close to the girl's skin, not touching, only close enough to feel. "If we do not remove this," she said, "your father's name will not survive your marriage. No man will take a girl with a curse on her skin. No man will take the girl whose face is half darkened by a spirit. I am doing this for you. I am doing this for your father's name. I am doing this for the compound." Nafisa did not understand the words. She only watched the ladle. "If it hurts," her stepmother went on, "it is because the spirit is leaving. If it does not hurt, the spirit is dead, and we can stop. Be still, child. Be still." The ladle came closer. The heat found the wrist. The girl's eyes did not leave her stepmother's face. She watched, the way so many children in so many compounds have watched, while a grown person decided what their pain was for. 4 seconds. The skin darkened. The bronze circle did not move. The bronze circle did not shrink. The bronze circle, in fact, looked larger than it had ever looked, as if it had been waiting for someone to put fire next to it to show what it really was. Adaze pulled the ladle away. She was sweating. She said, "It is done." Nafisa looked down at the new wound. Around it, the bronze of the birthmark had changed color. It was no longer bronze. In the lamplight, with the new burn wet on the skin, it looked like gold. She did not say so. 2 days later, the day of the royal visit was announced. Eze Okafor, the king of the next kingdom, was bringing his only son, Prince Obadiah, to Amara Ife to inspect the harvest and to choose, the elders whispered, a girl from one of the great compounds to be his wife. Adaze spent a whole morning dressing Chiamaka. She oiled Chiamaka's hair with shea butter. She laid out a wrapper the color of royal indigo. She put a coral bead on her daughter's neck. She put a coral bead on her daughter's wrist, on top of the wrist where Nafisa's mark was, so that Chiamaka's skin would be the first thing the prince saw. To Nafisa, she gave the bone-colored wrapper and a single white thread for her waist. She said, "Stay in the kitchen, girl. Stay where you cannot be seen. The prince is not coming to look at the Ash girl. The prince is coming to look at a daughter of this compound, and the daughter of this compound is Chiamaka. Do not shame us. Do not shame your father. Do not shame the dead." Nafisa carried the firewood into the kitchen. From inside the kitchen, she could hear the drums beginning. She could hear Chiamaka laughing. She could hear the compound gate opening for the king's men. She stood by the wall, and she held her wrist with her other hand, and the gold-colored mark on the burn was warm to the touch. She did not know why. She only stood there and waited for the day to finish. The drums sounded 3 times for Eze Okafor. The drums sounded twice for his son. The compound council knelt. The chiefs brought kola nuts. The young men brought palm wine. The prince, Prince Obadiah, was 22 years old. He had the kind of face that does not look at anything for too long, because everything he looked at for too long became a thing he was expected to marry. He wore a wrapper of white and green. He wore a small iron cap on his head. He walked with a short spear, not because he needed it, but because his father said a prince should not look like a boy. He smiled at the right moments. He said the right greetings. He lifted the right kola nut with his right hand. He was everything a princess is supposed to be promised to. Adeze brought Chiamaka forward. Chiamaka bowed. Chiamaka lifted the palm wine. Chiamaka did everything the songs say a princess should do. The prince accepted the wine. He took a small sip. He looked at Chiamaka's face. He looked at Chiamaka's coral beads. He did not say anything. He was, after all, not yet required to speak. Eze Okafor's eyes, however, were moving the way a king's eyes move. Across the compound, across the courtyard, across the doorway, as if he were reading the room the way a chief reads a problem. Then the king's eyes stopped. They did not stop on Chiamaka. They did not stop on the elders. They stopped on the kitchen doorway, where Nafisa was standing with a bundle of firewood in her arms, half in shadow, half in light, with the bone-colored wrapper pulled high, and the wrist, with its small gold-colored circle, exposed to the sun. Eze Okafor said nothing for a long moment. Then he asked Adeze, in a voice that was polite and that carried the weight of a man who did not need to raise his voice to be heard, "Who is the girl in the doorway, mother of the compound?" Adeze answered quickly, the way a person answers when the answer has been prepared. "She is nobody, my king. She is the late wife's orphan. She is not part of the household. She is only carrying firewood. She is not for looking at." Eze Okafor did not turn his head. He only lifted his hand, the way a king lifts his hand to silence a room, and said, "Bring her forward." Nafisa walked forward. She carried the firewood still. She had been told not to drop anything in front of the king. She knelt the way she had been taught. She did not bow her head because she had been taught not to look at a king's face before a king's face looked at her. So she kept her eyes on the ground. She could see the shadow of the prince's spear on the floor. She could see the king's sandals. She could see her own hands, dark with ash, on the firewood. Eze Okafor leaned forward. He did not ask her name. He asked the room, "Who marked this child?" There was silence. Adeze's mouth opened, then closed. Chiamaka looked at her mother. Elder Obina, who had come in late from the yam meeting and was still wearing his travel wrapper, looked at Nafisa's wrist for the first time in years. He saw what the village had been seeing. He saw the burn, still pink around the edges, half healed, half not. And at the center of the burn, Not bronze, not dark. Gold. He drew a breath. Madame Iroanau, who had walked into the back of the courtyard uninvited, because Madame Iroanau walks where she pleases in this village, stepped forward. She did not ask permission. She unrolled a small cloth she had been carrying for 19 years. Inside the cloth was a beaded band, a royal identification band, the kind only daughters of a king's true lineage wear from birth. "My king," she said, "this child is not a foundling from the river. This child is the daughter of Hadiza, who was your sister's youngest. This child was hidden at birth by order of your sister, because a prophecy at her naming said she would be marked on the wrist and would be taken by her father's enemies if she was known. She has been hidden in plain view, in this compound, for 19 years. The mark on her wrist is not a curse. The mark on her wrist is the family seal." Eze Okafor did not move for a long time. Then he stood. The whole compound stood with him. He walked to Nafisa. He lifted her wrist gently, the way a man lifts the wrist of his own sister's child. He looked at the small, gold-colored seal. He turned it toward the sun so that the whole court could see. The seal, in direct sun, did not look bronze. It did not look like a birthmark. It looked like a king's mark, pressed into the skin of a child. The kind of mark royal bloodlines in those parts used for centuries, before paper and ink were trusted to remember. Prince Obadiah, who had been quiet the whole morning, walked forward. He took Nafisa's other hand. He lifted her gently from where she knelt. He did not ask her anything.
He only turned to Adeza and said, in a voice that was not raised, and that did not need to be raised, "You marked the king's blood with fire." In any other year, this would have been answered in the market square. In this year, I will let my father's court answer it in its own way. But know this, mother. The girl you burned is the girl I will marry. The gold you tried to take from her skin is the gold you will not live to wear. Adeza tried to speak. The room did not let her. The compound council did not let her. The drums did not let her. Even Chiamaka did not let her. Chiamaka had stepped away from her mother's side the moment Madame Ironu had unrolled the cloth, and she was now kneeling at a distance, her own head bowed, because Chiamaka, raised in the way she had been raised, knew exactly what her mother had done, and what the cost of it would be. Eze Okafor spoke one more sentence. He said, "Bring Elder Obina forward." Elder Obina was brought forward. The king did not punish him. The king did not need to. The king said only, "You took the child and did not protect her. You saw the fire and did not stop it. From this day, the compound stands, but you stand inside it as the elder of a household that has lost its name. Your daughter, the one who tried to take the seal by burning it, is no longer a daughter of this compound. Take her to the road that leads out of the village. Do not walk with her. Do not speak her name in this market again." Then he turned to Nafisa. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He only said, "Child, the gold on your wrist was not made by fire. The gold on your wrist was made by the blood that put you on this earth. Where fire tried to take it, the blood gave it back. You are the daughter of my sister. You are the daughter of this house. You will come to my kingdom. You will sit where my sister's daughters sit, and the fire that tried to take you will be remembered in the songs that will be sung about this day, so that no woman in this kingdom will ever again lift a hot ladle to a child and call it love."
Nafisa did not smile. She was not yet the kind of woman who smiles when a man in authority speaks kindly to her. She had been the ash girl too long for that. She only stood up straight. She looked at her own wrist. She looked at the gold-colored seal, which did not move, which did not fade in the sun, which only looked, in the light of that afternoon, like the small gold seal of a house that had been waiting for her to come home. Prince Obadiah stepped forward. He took her hand, gently, the way a man takes a hand he intends to keep. He said, "Come with me, daughter of my father's sister. Come with me, and let the village see what they tried to burn." Madame Iroanu, behind them, lifted her wrapper at the shoulder again, the way women lift their wrappers when a long thing has finally come to an end, and she said, to no one in particular, "The seal is for the king's eye. The fire is for the village's memory. Remember both." Adeze and Chiamaka left the compound before sundown. They did not take the bone-colored wrapper back. They did not take Chiamaka's coral beads back. Madame Iroanu took the coral beads off Chiamaka's wrist herself in front of the elder council and laid them on the ground for the village to see. Elder Obina stayed in the compound. He swept the courtyard alone the next morning for the first time. He did not sweep it well. He did not need to. Nafisa was taken to the king's kingdom in a litter of white cloth. The drum sounded 9 times for her, not for the bride Chiamaka was supposed to be. In the songs they would later sing about that day, the drum was remembered as the gold drum. The scar was remembered as the gold scar, and the ladle, the iron ladle Adeze had used by the fire, was hung on the wall of the market square in Amara Ife, where it is hung to this day, so that no woman will forget what a hot ladle in a jealous hand can do when there is no one in the room brave enough to say, "Stop." If this story stayed with you, leave a comment with the word gold so we can find every reader who felt the weight of that moment. Subscribe if you want the next story from this village, because the songs do not end here. The compound still stands. The seal still glows. And the next time a young woman walks into a king's courtyard wearing bone-colored cloth and a mark on her wrist that no fire could take, the village will know what to do. They will not look away.